What's the most effective way to reduce risk and increase profitability? Welcome to Tea at Taxevity, where you get insights from insiders, our many clients and collaborators. I'm Pramod Sharma, your actuary at Taxevity. We transfer risks with life and health insurance. We have a special guest today. Who are you and what do you do when you're not being interviewed?
Hi, Pramod. Thank you very much for the invite to be on Tea at Taxevity. I appreciate that. My name is Jay Perry. I founded a company called Ally Business Coaching, and we are a coaching company that we're on a mission to create great leadership inside great companies. So what that means is that we are working with people that have the keenest of desires to reach the very top of their form and have an eye on the future in order that they can ensure their sustainability inside of their company. So this is based upon my years of working in business, creating several multi-million-dollar companies, working with my clients. We've lost track of how many multi-million-dollar corporations that we've actually helped fund and found, and we work with these people in order that they can maximize and optimize their own potential. That's our mission.
Perfect. Where is your office located?
Well, actually, we're everywhere. That's because we're virtual. Everything that we do, we have designed around the coaching is delivered on an online platform such as Zoom or GoToMeeting. So we're currently working with people around the world. Part of what we do for the client is it allows for them to participate in high quality live coaching sessions with very reasonable prices because we have no travel and accommodation expenses associated with that. So we are virtual in your office.
I think that's an ideal approach. With our interviews, we used to record them in our office, but now we're doing them virtually also because it reduces our costs and it lets us interview more guests. Though both of us could probably walk to each other's offices, though it would take us a few hours. Now, when it comes to leadership, what are the big risks?
Well, there's very many actually. The primary one that we've identified that we can attach a dollar amount to is that of turnover, employee turnover. It's a fact that over 1/3 of the people that quit a job are actually leaving the boss. This is proved by exit interviews and by a variety of companies such as Gallup, HR Exchange, all of those kinds of companies that study those kinds of things. Now, what that equates to, if you start to think about it, is over $146 billion annually in the US alone. So you can see worldwide, you're probably looking, by the time you extrapolate out the economy to worldwide, you're probably closing in on $500 billion worldwide of people leaving the boss as opposed to leaving the job. Now, one of the things that adds credence to this kind of study, if you think about it anecdotally, most people stay in their preferred profession. They continue doing the same kind of job, but they'll go to a competitor. So that if you look at that cost, what is it comprised of? Well, there's the recruitment cost, which is obvious because you have to go out and get someone new. There's onboarding, there's training because there's uniquenesses that have to be accommodated inside of every company. So these onboarding and training costs associated with any kind of a replacement that, if you start thinking about operations like Glassdoor as an example, where people can, if they're in a disgruntled state, they can voice their opinion about what it's like to work at that place, which could compound the kinds of costs associated with that. So these are the kinds of things that you have to consider. Not even considered are the likelihood of missing goals and the associated costs with that. And what I mean by goals, missing goals in growth and sustainability. Because you have people coming up in the organization, they're the likely ones to take over in the future. So there's peripheral costs as well. And then you have the disengaged employees. This would be a secondary factor, because if they're not inspired, so if leadership is not inspiring them to want to do their job at optimal levels, then you have a big problem. So the fact is that 21% of employees feel like they're managed in a motivational manner. Now, that sounds okay, but flip it upside down. 79% didn't answer yes to that question. That's huge. And what is the cost associated with that? Absolutely no one really knows.
Those are some quite scary statistics. We can see that there are quite a few negatives from bad leadership, but what about the positives from great leadership?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because if you start to look at the opposite end of the spectrum, there's tremendous gains to be made inside of leadership when it starts to operate at an appropriate level. So first off, there's higher employee satisfaction, there's higher retention and performance as well. There's greater customer service, there's a better reputation, higher quality of product actually has been associated with this engagement piece. And lastly, but not leastly, increased profitability. So this is all documented, study after study, again, by companies like Gallup, DecisionWise, Insperity, and many, many more. From our own archives, we can look at our clients where they have raised their CSI, their customer service indexing. So in other words, the satisfaction their customers feel with that particular company has risen because we now have leadership guiding their people in an engaged fashion. They're creating a better experience for their customer. Another increased their profitability by 8%. They reduced production costs by 8 salaries in a single year. So their overall sales went up 8% and their headcount went down 8. Not that we were looking to do that, but it was in a matter of reallocating those headcount to other locations. So it made it much more effective inside of this one particular location that they have out of 6. Another one of our clients raised productivity by 12% by reworking their leadership approach at one of their 6 locations. And others have received thank you notes from their people, the people that have participated in our course. They've spoken of improved confidence levels, and they've set sales records, all because they paid attention to the way that they were leading.
Yeah, those are quite remarkable results. I like it when people are able to use actual facts to back up the things that they're saying. We know that leadership is really important. Is there a magic bullet or a magic pill that will help people be really effective leaders?
I wish I could invent that magic bullet, that magic pill, but it doesn't have anything to do with capitalizing on the strengths of a single individual leader. It's all about the normal that you can create inside of a company. So another little fact for you in the audience: the normal everyday supervisor. Just think about this number I'm going to outline in front of you right now. This is absolutely mind-blowing. I'm in the field and I was just blown away when I found this. The average everyday supervisor out there in the workforce has been supervising staff for an average of 9 years before they receive any training on how to do it properly. Well, we maintain that it's a skill set, this leadership. It's a skill set that can be acquired. And in the best-selling book that I wrote with Brian Tracy called Success Manifesto, that was one of the very first points that I made in there. This is a skill set that can be learned. And so what we want to do is help people understand that skill set, help them work with that skill set, develop those skills around that. So most people are very familiar with a SWOT, right? Strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. So usually in an activity like that, it ends up constructing some kind of exercises that are designed to strengthen weaknesses. Well, our focus is quite different. We don't do it that way. We actually help people identify what their true strengths are, learn what will take them away from being in their true strengths, and thus going into a less effective fashion. And then we help design ways that they can stay in those strengths more of the time. Thus, they become more effective and more efficient. That's the beauty of a personal coach, that we can work one-on-one. Everything that we're talking about is applicable in the day-to-day because that individual has a specific challenge that they're working on defeating. We can help them with that specificity about that particular challenge. We can take the things that we have talked about and apply it to that individual participant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've got a leadership development course. Can you tell us how that is constructed?
Mm-hmm. Thanks. I'd be happy to share that. It is work, and it's not to be underestimated. But when it's customized, it's more appropriate and applicable to the person, as I mentioned previously. So we have specifically a 5-star rating on our leadership development course and a 4.8 rating in anonymous surveys of participants from satisfaction on a scale of 1 to 5. We recently concluded a case study within one company. We were using the supervisor's rating of the participants in the course. And what we were able to do was do a pre-course rating and a post-course ranking of these people that were participating with us. Now, on average, the participants achieved 11.87% improvement, as noted by their direct supervisors, and in their leadership competences. So again, adding more credence that this is a skill set that can be learned and can be mastered. So what it boils down to is this customized personal approach that makes a significant difference. We call it the Leadership Development Course, very simplistic in its nature, LDC for short. And when we constructed this course, we knew that the primary thing was that it had to be manageable for responsible workers, supervisors, and leaders inside the company. So what we've done is we have taken what we consider bite-sized pieces, and we discuss these bite-sized pieces once per week for 26 weeks. So that allows that the supervisor, leader of that company that has a real job to take care of as well, that we're interfering with their work week as little as possible. On average, our sessions last between 30 and 40 minutes per week. There's small observatory type exercises in between so that they can practice with what we've been talking about. So it's constantly refreshed in their memory from a day-to-day basis as well. And we, as far as the construction of the course itself goes, we start with an inward look at who that person was. I mentioned earlier about a SWOT. Well, we have our own assessment piece that we use in a company out of Texas. And they provide an online assessment. The candidate, which is what we call our participants, will go online, answer a questionnaire, and then we get a report back. And that outlines what this person is intensely interested in, what their greatest strengths are, what are the things that will pull them away from those strengths, and what might happen to their behaviors if they are pulled out of those strengths. So we spend the first 5 weeks of going over that material with those people. And not only are we working with them and explaining everything about them in those first 5 weeks, we're asking them to look for them to show up in their work today. And that's what they're doing. They start to see these things showing up, and they start to understand that, oh, I am getting pulled away. That's upsetting me. I'm getting away from my strength. So it becomes a very real way that they can apply all of these lessons about themselves to their work day. The second section of the course deals with leadership communication. So we break that down into bite-sized pieces, incoming and outgoing parts of communication. So we talk about that for a couple of weeks. Then we talk about behaviors. So leadership behaviors are extremely important. We know that the leader is always under the microscope, so we talk about those. And then we get down to the root level of what is the underlying thinking of every great leader. And we examine that for probably about 7 weeks. Now, where the course finally winds its way, and I'd like to remind you in the audience that every single one of these lessons throughout, there's 21 of them that deal with the actual subject of leadership. Every single one of them has this personal information that we opened with woven throughout it. So we're constantly referring back to that. So the individual can make it very, very personally applicable and to get the maximum benefit. And then we wind them through some exercises that help define themselves as the leader that they want to create, they want to be, and make a commitment toward. So that, in a nutshell, is 6 months worth of work.
Mm-hmm. Looks like you've come up with quite a practical and effective program. Jay, what's your key message for the people watching?
Well, I think the key message is that theory is great. I mean, we can all read wonderful, fantastic books, and there's hundreds, literally hundreds of them there. But that's theory. It's necessary as well, but it's a guide to helping people understand things at a very personal level. And being able to help apply those theoretical lessons, the best results won't be claimed. unless you have some kind of personal intervention that can make and help a person uh, realize those in their workday. So I don't urge all the decision makers to pay particular attention to this area of concern for the sake of the profitability of their own company, the sustainability of their company. That those that are not at that level, you can create an awareness of this need in your company. You can make the case for saving money. You can make the case for increasing profit. So put them in touch with us if you're not in that particular position of decision making. We'll help them, walk them through that, and show that this is a profitable way and a sustainable way to grow a company.
Great. What's the best way for people to reach you?
Email. My name in lowercase is JAYPERRY @ and it's the first three letters of the alphabet followed by hyphen. So it's A-B-C-INC.com. The A-B-C- stands for Ally Business Coaching. So it's A-B-C-INC.com. Or they can reach me by phone. It's 416-587-1748.
Thanks very much for being a guest, Jay.
Well, thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
Okay, that's the end of our episode. Thank you to everyone for watching.